and I am joined by the amazing Meg Heppner. What a lovely sight to see this morning. Thank you, Meg, for joining us all the way from South Surrey, BC. I know that's a little earlier there than it is here in Toronto, so I'm grateful for you jumping on. For those of you who don't know Meg, Meg is our branch director in South Surrey. She is also a life coach, and she is so knowledgeable, so talented. I just cannot wait for this conversation because we're talking today about the stories that we tell ourselves and how they affect our lives and our future. And I think this is such a huge thing, especially for women and especially for women entrepreneurs. So what a perfect time to be chatting about this. But hello, Meg, welcome.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I love everything Happy Healthy Women, right? You know, I adore what you're doing. I adore the women that I'm meeting through this platform. So this is a real honor for me. Every time I get to chat with you and every time I get to do something that involves Happy Healthy Women, I absolutely love it. So thank you so much. And yeah, like you said, stories, it's incredible because we tell stories all day long and we don't even realize it, but those stories control our life. So I'm super excited to be talking about this. I love this subject.
Okay, me too. So let's just dive in. I want to ask you, first of all, about stories. So where do these stories, okay, so when we talk about stories that we tell ourselves, give me some examples. Like what are some things that come up for us? And then I'm going to ask you where they come from so that we can understand that piece too. But yeah, start to share a little bit about what stories we're talking about.
Sure. And maybe I can combine those two questions because we all tell ourselves different stories, but we all sort of start the same. So I am a huge geek when it comes to personality development and what happens to us when we're babies. And it's really interesting because we come into this world a sponge. And we don't really have consciousness, right? We're awake, we're aware, but we don't really have consciousness. And that develops for us as we grow up. And we are so bombarded with information that we have to keep track of it somehow. And telling stories is how our brains keep track of all the different information that we get, right? So we tell ourselves a story that if I touch fire, this will happen. So first we have the experience, and then we start to tell a story about that. And then that story gets incorporated into our identity. So depending on how you grew up, it's going to massively affect the stories that you tell yourself. So for women, a lot of the stories that we tell ourselves is that we need to be sacrificial or we need to be good girls, right? Or other people come first or whatever, right? These different types of stories, or that we don't necessarily need to kind of go after our dreams, but that our role is to support other people with going after their dreams, especially for those people that are my age, right? Like, so if you're in the, 40 range, that's still the story that we're getting. I do find that younger women are not getting that story as much anymore, which I think is really, really cool. And I think is really a beautiful direction that we're going into. But for a lot of us, these are the stories that we tell ourselves because they were exemplified some way to us. So whether that was through our parents or whether that was through our culture or our, upbringing, our religion, whatever it was, these stories get downloaded into us. And here's the interesting thing about a story. We can forget a story, but it's in our subconscious and it still controls us. So very often, like I have this story about my grandma who I loved so much. And she would always tell me, this story about how like, it's good to be a little chubby because it meant you were healthy. And I totally forgot that story. But because of my deep love for my grandma, I carried that story my whole life. And for those of you who know me, I've always been this yo-yo dieter that's been, trying to lose weight, but it's never working and blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't until I went back and went, what's my story? And I went, oh, I actually have a positive story about being a certain size. And that's the reason that's the reason that I can't make progress in the way that I want in my health. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I love what you said about we might forget it consciously, but subconsciously it's always there and it's so driving us, right? Unless we look at it, unless we unravel it, like, right? Or does it always, like, are we doomed?
No, No, you're not doomed. You're not doomed.
Okay.
But you make a really good point, because if you have some area of your life, and this was the point with my story, if you have some area of your life where you go, I cannot move forward and I don't know why, you have a story there, and you may just have forgotten it. Like, it might just be in your subconscious. It's not in your conscious. You don't realize that you have a story, but it's back there somewhere. And that's why doing that deep dive into, like, how did I become the person that I am? Like, how did I actually develop is really, really important. Sometimes we have this cliche of, like, diving into yourself, and you're like laying on a couch with a therapist, and telling the story of your childhood. And it seems so silly. But the truth of the matter is, so much of who we are right now today is because of the stories that we internalized from when we were young. So diving into your stories and going back there is huge, because you can look at your story and you can ask yourself, what exactly is my story? Like, gain clarity. And you can actually go through a process of figuring out, how did it develop and how can I move forward from there, which is actually a really, really cool thing. Your stories do not have to stop you forever. Your story is a place that you can dive into to figure out some limiting beliefs and then to move forward.
I love this. So talk to me about the work that we're talking about in terms of like how to heal from these stories, right? Because some stories might be harder on us than others, right? Like, we have lots and lots of stories, and some might just be contributing to like a daily habit of, I don't know, drinking coffee every day, right? And then some might be contributing to real issues that we have going on. So talk to me about some of the processes that, or did you want to go sort of towards how this affects our lives, and maybe we can combine those two as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what's really interesting is, we have a narrative, we have a story, and some, like, you're right, they're silly stories and they're totally fine. They're part of who we are. It's how we keep track of our identity. No problem. But what you're talking about is, some of our stories are these key decisions that affect the rest of our life, that are really, really unhelpful, right? And you've made this key decision in your narrative that's going to affect you negatively when you don't feel like you have any other choice, when you feel like you don't have resources to figure it out. It's normally something that happened when you were quite young and you were very highly emotional at the time. So when we're young, we are constantly thinking about our survival. We don't know we're thinking about our survival, but we are. We're constantly looking around at the world going, will these people take care of me? Am I safe and am I loved, right? That's what we're thinking about as children. We're actually thinking of that as adults too, but we'll keep it at children. And so we modify our behavior in order to make sure that our caregivers will take care of us. And as we modify our behavior, we make key decisions. So let's say one of the key decisions is, every time I have a need, mom is upset with me, right? So that happens. And we make this key decision going, oh, I can never have needs. Because if I'm going to survive, if I'm going to have my mom take care of me, I cannot have needs, because when I have needs, mom gets upset. And when mom gets upset, the chances of my survival are less, right? So this is all just very evolutionary. Like, this is how we've evolved to be as human beings. We're not aware of it, but this is what's happening. And so then we have this decision that we've made, and now we build a narrative around it. So we go, I don't have needs. I don't talk to my friends about my needs. I don't talk to my husband about my needs. I don't talk to anyone about my needs. I keep those pressed down, and I just sacrifice and I give and I take care of everyone else. And if we can go back and we can look at that key decision, we can actually unravel it so that you can build a new story. Right? Because when we make these stories in our minds, we honestly don't have enough information to make those stories. We evolve to make stories because we keep track of them, but very often as human beings, we're susceptible to making assumptions. We're susceptible to, jumping to conclusions and all these different kinds of things that are not actually helpful for us. So if we can look at getting really clear on what the story is, getting really clear on what would I have to believe for this story to be true. So figuring out your values, right? Because if you have a story like, let's say a story like, oh, well, we can even take the one about the mom, right? Like, let's say if I have needs, mom won't take care of me. That's your key decision, and you're building a story like that. You have to ask yourself, what values are behind that story, right? And that's a little bit interesting because, like, for me, I grew up with this idea that I shouldn't speak up. And the value behind that is that some people are more important than other people. Some people deserve to get their voices heard and some people don't. That's hierarchical thinking. I don't want to live by that value anymore. Right? So really going like, what would I need to believe in order for this story to be true? So if you have a relationship, let's say, and you know, you've struggled in your relationships and you go, oh, all men are jerks. Well, what would you have to believe in order for that to be true? Really digging into what's your value system. So that's a really interesting thing. And then asking yourself, do I have all the facts? Do I honestly know all the things that happened during this time? So if you had this situation, like we can go back to the one with your mom and it was hard to express needs to her because she would get upset. What was going on in her life? What was your family situation like? Really taking your perspective and broadening it so you get more information. Because as children, when we develop these stories, we very often go, this is the story and it's my fault. Right? This is the story and it's because of me. Because we're very egocentric at that stage. We just think about ourselves. So really starting to go, what else was going on that I was completely unaware of, but that I now built a story and a value system about that is now directing the rest of my life, right? And then really looking at your story and going, what have I gained, right? We can be so hard on ourselves when we have a difficult story, but what has this actually helped me with, right? One of the things, if you've grown up with a mom that didn't allow you to like maybe speak up, one of the things you've learned probably is how to gauge what other people need. That's a gift. It's a gift. Even though the story is hard and even though you need to learn how to express yourself, you did still get a benefit from that story and to really look at that. But then the opposite as well. What are the exact consequences of this story, right? So really just starting to dig into it. And then what's your new story? What new story do you want? And what would the value system have to be behind that new story? So for me, when I learned to speak up, I had to leave the value system of hierarchical thinking that some people were important and some people weren't. And I had to take on a value system that every single person deserves to be heard. And then I had to decide what actions, which is the last step, what actions will I take now with this new value system and this new story?
Yeah, this all makes so much sense in just going back to these things and unraveling them and breaking them apart and like taking a bird's eye view at it versus like being in it, right? Like looking at it from a really objective place and saying, oh my goodness, right, I can tie all of these things together because of this one incident.
Totally.
So, and I know that you come across this a lot, right? This is such great work that you do. In what areas can we expect? Because something, say, that happened, for example, the example that you used with, you know, I can't speak up, right? That might affect so many other areas of our lives. So, Meg, what have you seen as the main, like the key areas that the stories we tell ourselves really affect? I'm guessing, you know, health and wellness. I'm guessing our ability to accomplish or money. Like, what would you say are the key areas that these show up in?
Totally. Yeah, there are patterns, right? Like even though each person is unique, we do all tend to have patterns. So some of the huge areas where I hear stories, exactly, health and wellness, 100%. Do I deserve good things? That is a story that people have answered for them, or a story that they've created, right? Do I deserve good things? Some of us have decided no, and we're creating that story. And some of us have decided yes, and now we're creating that story. So definitely health and wellness is huge. Relationships. Oh, that's a big one. We all have these massive stories about relationships, and some of them are helpful. Many of them are not. So that's another thing that's absolutely huge. One of the big things is, what am I capable of? People put so many limits on what they're capable of. And it starts with these little stories that they grow and grow and grow. So that's another area. What am I capable of? Like, I could never. That, you know, I shouldn't. That's not for me. All these different things that they've put stories about. So health and wellness for sure. Relationships is a huge one. What are you capable of is massive. The other story that people have, and I think this is a really, really important one, is, am I powerful? So many of us think we're not powerful and that what we contribute doesn't matter, right? Like you see that when you have a social issue come up because people go, what could I do? And they
Right.
don't realize that actually you're a very powerful human being. In every single interaction that you have with someone else, in every single interaction that you have in business, in relationship, in public, whatever, you are contributing to society. You are contributing to what society looks like and what reality looks like. You are an extremely powerful human being. So anytime that you are short with someone, anytime that you don't look out for the best interest of everyone, every time you do these things that are a little bit less than your highest self, you are contributing to creating a world like that. And every time you make the opposite decision and you go, no, I am going to live to my highest self, you create a world like that, right? So it's really, really important to know, what do I value? And am I going to live out that value? So when we go back to my story about being able to speak up, if I have hierarchical thinking that some people's voices matter and some people don't, if that's my story, I think it only affects me, but it doesn't. Because when you look now at Black Lives Matter, when you look at all these social issues that are coming up, someone like me needs to really question whose voice matters. Everyone's voice. And I need to make sure that that value system is correct, so that when I hear these different ideas, that I'm open to them. When I hear other people's voices, that I'm open to them. So these stories that we tell ourselves and these value systems that we live by, we need to investigate them, because when a social issue comes up, we want to be ready to do the best that we can in that area. So that's just a personal one for my own speaking up. But in any area of your life, if you have a business that you want to thrive and you have a certain story that's not letting you, you are contributing to a certain type of business atmosphere, right? Like a lot of people will say, especially as women, right? We women, we do business a little bit different when we're doing it from a feminine state, right? We're not as competitive. We're more working in complement with one another, etc. And if we go, no, we can't do that because business is like this, right? This is how we do business. This is how you have to market. This is how you have to do things. You're contributing to a world that maybe isn't the best for us. But if you go, I believe in sustainable business, I believe in working together with other women or men, and I'm not going to be in a competitive nature constantly. If you do that, you are actually contributing then to the story of society, because all of our little mini stories become a cultural narrative. Right? That's how we build these cultural narratives. If every one of us goes, business must be done this way, then that becomes the cultural norm. But if some of us step up and go, no, I'm living a different story. My story is that the more women I work with, the more successful we all are. And if I truly believe that and live that out and have that as my value system, then I am slowly but surely going to change the culture. And that's what we're all looking for, right? So
Yes.
hopefully that answered your question. I think I went all over there, so I don't know if that answered your question.
No, you know what? It was so chock full of knowledge and education, that one answer. And I think that, what I'm getting is that, and I think what we're all learning is that, like, this is a muscle, right? Like, telling ourselves stories that serve us is like working out, right? Like, it takes time, and it's not something that we ever stop doing, right? Because there's a whole abundance out there of stories that don't serve us. And so we do have to, like, just like there's a whole abundance of, food and wellness practices that don't serve us, right? And so we really have to continue the work. And you're so right. What we do, it starts with one, right? It starts with us. And what we do inside really affects, it has that ripple effect on the world. So Meg, I love this. So can you share a little bit about, because you work with people to break these stories apart, to unravel these stories, to see where they're showing up in their lives, and to, once and for all, be able to move past them. So talk to me about how you work with people. Is it groups? Is it one-on-one? I'm going to post your link up here so that people can go see that.
Absolutely. So yeah, I do a lot of one-on-one work. Absolutely. I do that, which I love. So obviously I have a coaching practice, and always wanting to work with women who are looking to be a really beneficial presence in this world and wanting to strive towards that. And women that feel stuck, right? So many of us feel stuck and we don't know necessarily what's that next step. I love working with women to consciously build their life so that they can really build something that they love. I do that one-on-one. Absolutely. Also, I do lots and lots of workshops. I took a little bit of a break now because I got to prepare for some stuff coming up after Christmas. But if you check out my meetup page, or if you check out my Facebook page, there are always events where we talk about stuff like this. And this is actually a deep dive that I'm going to be doing in the new year, where I'm going to be creating a workshop where we go through your story and we pull it apart and really look at, is this a beneficial story for you, or could you have a story that would actually really move you forward in whatever direction it is that you want to go? So for sure, you can find me on my website, you can find me on Facebook, and yeah, I do work with people one-on-one and in groups when I do workshops. So
beautiful. And all of your workshops are posted on the South Surrey. So if you're on Meetup, you can look up Happy Healthy Women South Surrey, BC, and you can attend no matter where you are due to us being all online right now. And you can also find Meg's events on our website. Also, I just want to point out that Meg is an incredible writer, and your editorials, Meg, are so, I love them so much. They're so wonderful. And you can find those too on our website under our editorial section. Some great writing by Meg. So, Meg, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful that you are part of this collective. You're an incredible leader and such a knowledgeable coach. I appreciate you so much. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I love it. I love you. I love everyone that is part of Happy Healthy Women. It's just been such a beautiful experience. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And for those of you who are watching who want to share your knowledge and expertise, just like Meg has and just like our other leaders do, please jump in with us. Join us at www.hhwglobal.com, and we will get back to you. Thanks, Meg. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Take care. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Bye.
Bye.